Thank you, Kat, Alair, Dane, and Ralph. There has been massive shifts in the way we work over the last 18 months. Technology is enabling workers to better control their schedules, make the most of their time, and access financing to fund their businesses. One of the core investment theses that we have at GGV is investing in the future of work, from companies in our portfolio such as Slack and Otter that reinvent the way we communicate at work to Workstream to help reinvent the way we hire and communicate to potential employees, to Chief and Valence, who develop and empower leaders at work. Next, we will hear from leaders from EBO, Para, Snappy, and Karat. All of these companies strive to enable workers from independent contractors, gig economy workers and drivers, creators and influencers, to even corporate employees to thrive in today's digital economy. Welcome.
I'm Crystal Berger, founder and CEO of EBO, the first ever on-demand media bookings API that's truly committed to breaking barriers to entry in media. And I'm honored to moderate today's dynamic panel on making work easy. And what better way to do that than to actually speak to founders who've actually made work easy. So joining us today, we have Hani Goldstein, Eric Way, and David Pickerell. Welcome, guys. I'll tag it to you for you to share a little bit about yourselves.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Hani, CEO and founder at Snappy. Snappy is a gifting platform that spreads smiles across the world. It is practically a way to send gifts really easily, take away all the hassle from the gift giving process, turn it into a one-click experience for the gift givers, but also for a fun and special experience for the gift recipients. We currently work primarily with enterprise customers, have over 1,400 customers on the platform, including companies like Salesforce, Zoom, Uber, Comcast, and growing really fast with 800% growth year over year.
David?
Hi, thanks, Crystal, Hani, Eric. It's good to be here with you all. I'm David. I'm co-founder and CEO at Para. At Para, we're focused on trying to build a better worker-focused gig economy by building a personal dispatch system on behalf of each individual driver. So what we realized is that drivers need tools to easily manage the work across the platforms they work on and to earn a good living. And from our end, we're trying to provide the tools which makes it simple to access all your opportunities and choose between your opportunities while on the road driving. I'm excited to be here. Look forward to chatting with everyone.
Last but not least, Eric.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Grateful to be here with you, David and Hani today. My name's Eric Way. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Karat Financial. We've built the first and only business credit card for digital creators like Instagrammers, TikTokers, and YouTubers. Because although they're fast-growing businesses, the current financial system doesn't understand them today. Our vision and focus is building a full set of financial infrastructure to support these creators and help them run their businesses and finances more effectively. So very, very grateful to be here today right now.
Eric, well, thank you so much. I think that's the perfect segue into today's conversation about how we build a workforce that's strong, but also keeping that workforce stable and enabling them to really be productive and meeting all of their physical and mental needs. And so we know that that really, truly is not an easy task. And so given the world that we're living in right now, post-COVID, what are some of the hottest topics that everyone sees on the panel that are arising in the workforce, and which companies are really doing those things well? So I think I'll start with you, David.
Yeah, good question. I think, the decision, we were a company that was born out of the pandemic, right? So we were started in sort of April. Pandemic April is what I call it. So we started off as a purely remote first company initially, right? So we had sort of staff in San Francisco and the Ukraine and sort of on the East Coast. I think over the last couple of months as the team has grown, we've actually made the decision to, I think, contrary to a lot of people, get a small office here in San Francisco. And that has been an awesome experience, just mostly because of the stage of the company we're at. It still is helpful to have some people in the office sat next to each other. So I think we are proponents of this sort of like hybrid work. So I think, when somebody joins the company, they come and spend the first week or two with us in San Francisco. But after that, sort of, we're happy for people to live where they are. So the way I view it is, the decision to go back to work or not is an intensely personal one, and it depends on the situation of you and your company. It's not an easy decision.
For sure. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Culture is more important than ever before, because think about, why do we work at all, right? Obviously there's an element on, hey, subsistence, paycheck, but a big part of it, more than ever, people find fulfillment, enjoyment from where we work and who they work with. And part of what's changing the workforce today is when people don't feel that, more and more they're just doing something on their own. It's easier than ever for somebody to serve and run their own business instead of working for someone else. And so for those of us who want to build something and bring on the right people to work with us, we have to be very thoughtful about, how do we build that sense of culture? Similar to what David said, we also grew during the pandemic, and about half of our team is remote. Now, many individuals are based in location with us in LA, and many aren't. And actually, very much, we've had lots of visits from those remote to come and spend time with those who are in the office. And we're thinking through, how do we build a culture that is intensely personal, intimate for people who are here in person, but also can scale to those who are remote. And I continue to think that's going to be the biggest things for companies like ours to think through. Otherwise, we'll lose them.
For sure. And Erica, I love that you mentioned culture. Do you have any company that you feel like has done culture well during the pandemic?
I think, to me, the ones that are most inspiring are companies that have been very flexible with the pandemic and letting those who are remote continue to stay remote. And as you likely know, a number of the bigger technology companies have taken a stand and said, hey, it's actually okay to be remote, and we're going to continue to support this on an ongoing basis going forward, right? I think it's increased recognition that, hey, talent is universal, but geographical nexuses around Silicon Valley, New York City, and so on are not. And we should try and figure out how to adapt one to the other.
Thank you. And Hani, I can't leave you out of this. So what do you feel is a rising topic regarding the workforce post-pandemic?
So I agree with Eric about culture being the most important thing that keeps bringing up from every company that we speak to. Mainly how to engage employees while everyone is remote, how to continue the culture that you have and maintain it, and also as you go through growth periods and having additional people to join, how do you connect between everyone? Another topic that's really interesting is wellness, and companies wanting to give employees more space and to make sure that they have a good work-life balance, where before it was cool to work all day, and now people understand that there is a need for people to have some sort of air and take a deep breath, especially as we work in Zoom. It's sometimes 14 meetings a day, and it's just really hard with all the speed. And I think that in general, there's a lot more flexibility from every company that we see to just adopt new ways to work together, and kind of be open and creative. But definitely culture and engagement being one of the most important things for companies.
Thank you, Hani. And to piggyback off of what you said, I'm going to tag to you, David. Hani mentioned about how these workflows are going to happen and how we're going to work together. And your app was actually built on the premise of enabling gig driver workers to manage, their independent contract work, how to automate control, money, and other opportunities. And you were actually one of those drivers yourself. So what are some of the pain points you experienced in the workplace, and how is what you're doing impacting it on a ground level?
Thank you. That's a great question. So I'll caveat this with, I've done a couple hundred trips, but I wouldn't deign to call myself a driver. So my experience was, I went out there, started driving, and I just started taking every trip that came my way, right? And I noticed after a couple days of doing this that I was making, somewhere between 10 to 14 bucks an hour, and that was before expenses. So that wasn't great, right? And in that process in our system, I saw that we had a driver who was making like 40 bucks an hour pretty consistently. working the same hours as I was. And I was, after a couple days, sort of went and actually drove up to Seattle and sat down with him in his car for a week. And I was like, can I just watch what you're doing, right? Because you're obviously doing something right. So our entire team actually went up to Seattle and sat in the car with him. It was pretty funny in that we rolled, it was him plus three people. So we'd show up and pick up food as a group of four, and we'd show up and drop off the food as a group of four, much to everyone's confusion. Uh, but what I learned from that process was one, he was working across 4, 5, or 6 apps simultaneously at the same time. And he was able to do all of this. So he was getting pings from 4 or 5 apps at the same time, all going in different directions. And he was able to run this mental model in his head to decide what to take, what not to take, while balancing the different times and when you had to pick up the food, all while driving, clicking the phone in the rain in Seattle, right? And I remember thinking, one, this is awesome, what he's doing. Two, this is going to cause poor Eric to crash and die at some point if he keeps doing this, basically. And I think really that was the insight we really gleaned from that, though, is one, people need more opportunities, and that's how you eventually end up earning more, is by having competition for your time. And two, the way it is right now is just way too hard. It's humanly impossible to scan across the universe of your opportunities. And that's really where we want to come in, is, we're to some extent, building what Eric did in his own head, just as a service for others.
Stand across the universe of your opportunities. I think we forget that on the day to day, and the fact that you were able to put a technology together that does that, I think, is really powerful. And it kind of leads to Hani and my question that I have for you. We are in this tech space, and sometimes we forget about all of the other sectors that mobilize the rest of our economy. And so Snappy is covering so many different verticals, from everything like healthcare to retail and also home services. And you guys even mobilize exterminators, right? So it's like you're bringing all of these universes together, right? So could you share a little bit more on how customers are using your platform, Snappy, to bring happiness to those employees who may be doing all that juggling that David just mentioned?
Yeah, so interestingly, everyone loves gifts, which is very cool for us. And we can see companies that are small and big all having the same type of need. Today, we work with over 100 industries, and as you mentioned, including the big giant tech companies, as well as law firms and hospitals and media companies, and even pest control companies. And I think that each one of them uses Snappy in a different way, and they all have a very nice and big impact by their different use cases. So you can see that when companies actually give something to an employee, like let's say $100 in their salary, that's something that would not make any impact at all and wouldn't change anything for that employee. But when they give a gift or something that's thoughtful and personal, then that has a huge impact on how that employee perceives the company appreciates them, and shows how much they care about him as an employee or her as an employee in the company. And we're seeing lots of team members, and we surveyed over 100,000 team members that received gifts, and they're all kind of saying that this is a form of way that helps them acknowledge their hard work, especially in these days. And some stats that are interesting is that 85% of them would prefer to get this and acknowledge that this is a really important form that companies should use.
So what are a couple of the coolest or funnest gifts that you've seen employers give to their employees?
So every industry is different, and we're seeing kind of all across the different industries. Some, for example, healthcare, they would do wellness campaign, doctors' gifts, Nurses Week, and things like that, while lots of cool campaigns that include even Pelotons. We've seen companies give away like a Peloton packet, as well as a trip to anywhere that the person would like to take around the world. And we've seen like really very expensive gifts, as well as other gifts that are more like gadgets, kitchen appliances, experiences, magic shows, things like that that anyone can go and use. And we see lots of very popular campaigns are more like the holidays, birthday, anniversaries, contests and raffles, and end of year appreciation, as well as just peer to peer and a regular engagement. And then we have companies that are more creative and do Mother's Day gifts, Father's Day gifts, and things like that. So it's very interesting to kind of have a close look at all the different campaigns.
For sure, and how those campaigns really translate into having happier employees. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and cut to you, Eric, and talk about Dustin, we heard from earlier today, who was actually at TikTok. He talked a lot about the creator economy and how it's changing the way that folks are just making a living on a day to day, right? Whether they're an IG influencer or freelance graphic designer, even teachers are now providing most of their classes digitally online. And so, what are your thoughts on this creator economy? And is it just kind of a buzz thing that's happening because of the pandemic, or do you think that it's something that's like here to stay?
Crystal, more and more, I think of the creator economy as just the economy. And that's because content is king. That's what we're doing right now. And the businesses that know how to create content are the ones that are going to succeed. So the fastest leading edge of that are pure digital creators, those YouTubers, those Instagrammers, those TikTokers. They're people who figured out a new way of reaching other people that's never been possible before. Because, hey, number one, from a technological perspective, it used to be really hard to make and distribute content, right? You had a few really expensive channels like television, radio, airwaves, and you'd have to go through a really expensive middleman to back you and get your name out there. And then you hope you become a star. And now with YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and more, anybody can go and make content and have it seen immediately by millions. And that's opening up an entire new line of how to make a living, right? And second, it's not just technologically, as you said, culturally during the pandemic, people really realized, gosh, when I can't meet other people in person, that connection, though, is still something so needed, so desired. And more people were receiving that education, that inspiration, that entertainment, that validation from the creators they follow online. So I don't think it's anywhere that's going to change, or it's here to stay, because the fact is people have listened and been interested in what other people have told them since the beginning of time in all parts of business. And now it's easier than ever for those creators to get their name out there and to create compelling content and build business lines around it.
Absolutely, Eric. And I have to throw this one at you because it is relevant. Do you think there'll be any new trends in this creator economy?
Absolutely. We're seeing the emergence of entire new types of business models, right? To be a creator, it's really horizontal. Number one, you might make money directly off of your content, right? Of course, YouTubers make AdSense, or creators on Patreon and Twitch reach and receive subscription money. Or number two, it could be from promoting and sharing other companies' products and services, which you see a lot with sponsorships and activations. And number three, and this is what I think is most new, most compelling, these creators are launching their own business lines, right? They're selling their own products, their own courses. And of course, we've seen many businesses lean into content, but now we're seeing those content creators themselves lean into business. And I think that's actually causing those businesses to also rethink how they've gotten scale to people as well, right? You can't just go online and run a bunch of ads. Maybe the right way is to build a genuine brand first and go from there. And that's new and that's exciting.
Absolutely. And look, it makes me want to go and create something so I can get a couple of extra
We're
checks.
creating right now. So, we're basically there.
We've got a creator running for governor of California.
That's very true. Meet
Correct.
Kevin. Yes.
Absolutely. And that's like where the opportunities are, right? And so it's like you can kind of create this brand and do the unthinkable, right? That you wouldn't be able to do in a traditional workspace. So for sure, for sure. I'm going to go to you, David. We hear a lot about, a lot of these large gig driver platforms like Uber and DoorDash, but there are hundreds of other platforms, even kind of lending and leaning into what Eric was talking about, creating their own opportunities in that space. So what are some ones that we might not hear much about, or that are really kind of blazing the trail, low key, that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I think, in an old life, I'd worked at Uber, and when I'd worked at Uber, most people worked on Uber, maybe Lyft, right? And then, we had sort of DoorDash, maybe Uber Eats, right? And I think that's really something that the pandemic has changed. Similarly to, I think, what Eric said earlier about the pandemic made people realize that they crave the sort of human to human interaction through some of these influencers. Similarly, I think we saw a seismic shift in the gig economy, which is people realized that they could no longer depend on one platform for the majority of their work. So you had a lot of Uber drivers start to have to try food delivery. And frankly, before the pandemic, most Uber drivers, I'd heard this quote a lot, is I ain't somebody's pizza delivery boy, right? But I think people realized that one, you can't just depend on a single platform because that platform uh, you know, you just can't be fully dependent on one. And I also think the second part we've seen is this explosion of gig drive touching opportunities between sort of last mile delivery, grocery delivery, 15-minute tile convenience delivery, marijuana delivery. It's just a very fast growing space, right? We even saw Walmart a couple of days ago announce their version of a delivery service. So we have a list of, call it 200 to 300 of these companies that are related to gig drive touching. But here's the thing, right? Let's say you're a driver right now. What does it take for you to work on somebody's platform? So one, you need to know they exist. Two, you have to bother to sign up. Three, after you sign up, you have to wait a couple days to be approved for that platform. Four, you have to know you're approved and then decide to go scan that app for work, despite the fact that there probably isn't a lot of work on that single platform. So basically, the onus, for you to expect somebody to do work on your platform, it's a very high bar, right? And that's why I think the other thing we noticed is the idea of the old economic model of acquire a user at a couple $1,000s in CAC and retain them at all costs, which is the model we ran at Uber. That is fundamentally broken. Primarily because of the fact that one, the winner has not taken all, and two, the fact is the reality is people are working across these multiple platforms. So really, that's what we're trying to do. Is it shouldn't be that hard to access all the opportunities across the platforms you're on. One, if you have a central profile, you should be able to be pre-approved for all of these opportunities. Two, shockingly, if a platform is just willing to make it easy to put an opportunity in the flow of work that a driver has right now and makes it real easy to take it and potentially pays a little more, shockingly, people would be able to take it. So I think we hear about this current environment of a labor shortage and people just not being able, people not wanting to come do work. I think, first of all, really simply, if you pay people more, that solves the problem. Two, there's too much friction and too much expectation on the user. The burden's placed on them too much, basically. So I think if we can solve those, we can build a more sustainable gig economy.
Absolutely. And that's what you're doing, like removing that friction and centralizing a lot of the work for the employee. I love those points that you mentioned, David. And also, going to you, Hani, with the work you're doing with Snappy. So looking at companies where you want to keep your employees happy, right? You want to make sure that if they're spreading the love amongst multiple platforms or multiple jobs, right, that they still come back home to you. And you guys have helped mobilize a lot of campaigns around keeping those employees happy. So what are like the key ingredients to like an amazing campaign for doing that? Or who have you seen do it really well?
So we've seen lots of companies do a great job in maintaining a really healthy culture and also focusing on lots of initiatives like give back initiatives, which today I think have lots of room in our society, especially what we've seen happen in the past year and how things can change around. People are a lot more grateful and they want to share the love internally, but also externally. So we've seen companies that also do campaigns that are based on donations for, outside organizations or things that they believe in the company and put together plans where they encourage their team members to take more initiatives to give back. And I think that's one of the things that are really impactful because it's more than money or anything like that we spoke about. It's something that goes in the heart and people feel like they have a real sense of meaning of why they're doing what they're doing and they're part of something that's bigger. So, seeing kind of incorporation of all these type of things is something that we've seen lots of success with. And also internally at Snappy, we try to adopt as much of these programs as possible to let employees lead different initiatives like that to kind of help spread happiness around is really the goal, as a platform, but also beyond that as a company.
For sure. And it goes back to, what Eric mentioned earlier with creating culture, right? Having people committed to the brands that and the things and causes that matter to them and really tapping into their pain. And that leads me to my question for Eric, tapping into that pain. You were a project manager over at Instagram and you helped them to deploy and make Instagram live, right? And in that process, you actually experienced a lot of the pain with the creators. And so what did some of that pain look like? How did it show up? And more importantly, how is Karat, enabling a lot of these creators to work better and easier?
Creating is really hard. But in this day and age, Crystal, say that one day you find yourself doing this more and more, and hundreds and thousands and millions of people starting to watch you, and you're saying, hey, wow, I can make a living just doing this, just hosting other characters and individuals on stage, interviewing them, sharing their thoughts and insights with the world. And now you're getting brand sponsorship deals, and you wake up, you're like, oh, I'm a business. Well, like, businesses have a bunch of things they need to do, right? They need to make sure they're set up successfully from a business operations to financial perspective to succeed, right? You need to be incorporated. You need to think about your taxes. Make sure you get paid on time. You have access to credit. So many different things. Now imagine you're 19 years old and this is the first quote unquote job you've ever had. It's really scary to figure it out. And now imagine when you try and go into a bank to explain what they do, they think you're shouting nonsense words at them. Just to give you very clear examples, right? We work with a chess streamer named Alexandra Botes. She's one of the top 5 female chess players in all of Canada. She went to Stanford. She ran a Y Combinator-backed startup. About a year and a half ago, she started to play chess online, and other people started to watch her. And it turns out she was really good at it, and they really liked watching her. And so today, she has over 900,000 followers on Twitch. She has over 300, 500,000 on her YouTube, hundreds of thousands on her Twitter. She's absolutely killing it as a business. But when she went to a bank, a financial institution, to start to take care of these basic things, she tried to set up a business credit card. They've rejected her twice because the types of questions creators get are ones like, you're making this much? Are you laundering money? And that's where we come in to help, because we want to make these creators' lives easier so they can focus on the content part. And we actually understand them in a way that these financial institutions don't. So we underwrite them off of what's relevant to them. And we've started with a business credit card that helps them scale up their need for working capital by providing them with limits that actually make sense as a beginning step to developing a full set of financial products for them to make their lives easier and help them, again, really grow the business part as well.
And the key word here is easy, Eric. I know we're running short on time, but I do want to ask everyone on our panel today, if you just had that one word or one phrase or that one piece of advice for any founder, CEO who may join and watch our panel today, what's that one thing that you would say to them to actually make work easy? And David, I'll start with you. I'll cut to you, Hani, and then we'll wrap with Eric.
I'll try to keep it to a couple sentences instead of a word, but I think from my perspective, it's too hard to do things that shouldn't be that hard to do, right? I think a lot of the work that at least we're doing at Para isn't rocket science, right? This is technology that is a solved problem. It just hasn't been applied to this existing problem, right? So I think a lot of what drives us is the fact that it's just too damn hard to do things that shouldn't be that hard. So my advice would be, what you can do to chip away at that and just play your little role in society to make things easier.
Thank you, David. Hani, what are your thoughts?
Generally, my thoughts are to keep it simple as possible. Sometimes simple looks simple, but in the back end of it, it's really complex to make things like really easy for that user that will take your solution and kind of play around with it. So focusing on the customer experience and making their life easier, solving their problem would be my advice.
Awesome. And last but not least, you, Eric.
Work doesn't need to just be a job. And I say if you're a founder focused on building a company, you should make sure it's in an area of something you really want to do, because the journey is going to be long, it's going to be hard. And if it's something that you inherently like in the first place, then it's more than just a job, right? It's your life. And similarly, as a founder, you should be thinking about how do you find people who are similarly mission aligned as you, where you get to build something together and go through the trials and tribulations, and that's okay because it's something you care about. That's what I'll say.
Awesome.
How about you? How about you, Crystal? You're also a founder and have a lot of things going on. What are your thoughts?
Thank you, David. I would say at the end of the day, commit to the things that you love. For me, as a founder, creating a technology, having worked in newsrooms and seeing the lack of efficiency in our newsrooms, and that yielded itself to lack of equity in the newsroom. I feel that if we really commit to the things like EBO, where it's totally committed to breaking barriers to entry in media, if we stay focused on what we really believe in, like the things that matter to us, we'll figure out the workflows. We'll centralize those things like David is doing. We'll give gifts like Hani is doing it. And more importantly, like Eric, we'll inspire creators to have a place to do the business of doing good. So for me, it's just, do what you love, do what you love and what you're committed to, and everything else will make work easy, right? It'll make work easy. But it is our hope that everyone who joined us today to see this panel was inspired, and that the work that we're doing will empower you to truly make work easy. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.